Welcome to HirewithEve.ai podcast. HirewithEve.ai is an AI tool to pre-screen candidates and accurately identify their skills to help you cut down your hiring time by 90%. In this podcast series, we interview and have in-depth conversations with global HR leaders across industries and geographies to understand current HR trends, leadership challenges, workforce plannings, and many more interesting topics. So with that, let's dive into today's conversation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Rahul Abhisek, the CEO and founder of HirewithEve.ai. It's a real pleasure to welcome today our guest, Shweta Rani. Shweta, to give you a brief introduction of Shweta started her career from Bharti Airtel and since then has worked with several companies such as Deloitte, Space Metrics, and she is now the Chief People and Culture Officer at Zinnov Management Consulting Firm, which has over 400 plus experts across 9 global offices, and she has been part of the organization for the last 12 years. So with that, welcome, Shweta, and it would be great also to hear a bit about yourself from you.
Thank you, Rahul. It's indeed a pleasure being here and amazing work done by you folks. So congratulations on that. I think you've already told about what I do at work, and what I don't do outside work is probably that's what you want to know about me. And I think I have a bug to travel, and that's something that I take immense pride in. Because the kind of work pressures that you deal with, it's important to de-stress, and I completely believe in the philosophy of that integration. So with travel, you tend to also meet interesting people, appreciate the beauty of the nature, and also come in contact with people from different culture, different background, and you appreciate what you have in life. So yeah, I mean, I'm an avid traveler. I read, and I also tend to lay down loose sometimes and just do nothing at all. So these are the things that I particularly do.
All right, perfect. And it's good to have both relaxing and work balance, as we say. So great, and thanks for that introduction, Shweta. So one of our first questions for you, it's on a fun side, is that we believe HRs are the superheroes of the organization. And what I want to understand from you is what do you think are some of their superpower? At the same time, what are potentially their kryptonite, so slash weaknesses?
Tricky question, but I would say very intelligent one. And thanks for calling us the superheroes. We really feel that we are superheroes at the workplace. I think there's a lot of responsibility that is assigned in any business function. And to me, if you ask me, HR is the core, the heart of the organization. As cliched as it might sound, if the heart is not functioning, nothing is functioning well into the work stream. So I think the superpowers could range from if you have somebody who is coming into your organization and is able to thrive. For me, creating a workplace where employees or the individual are feeling thrived upon, that's something is the superpower. And how do you enable that is truly, I think, the magic that HR creates, whether it's working with business leaders, whether it is working with tools technology, whether it is adapting to the changing work dynamics. These are the things that HR does really well. But on the flip side of it, to answer to your other question, things that could drastically go wrong is, every organization has this set of negative people or negative influence that you call in. How do you manage that emotion, and how do you manage that kind of workforce so that it doesn't become a very political organization? Yeah. It doesn't become an organization where negativity is creeping in no matter what your leadership, what your management does to it. And how do you create a workplace where people feel excited about? So I would say it's a combination of things that really it's all in I wouldn't say HR, but I would say business leader. I refuse to acknowledge that HR is just one function. It is a business function and it's an enabling function.
Yeah, yeah, a great answer. Then, great answer. So, what would you say is your vision for the role of HR in driving business growth and success?
See, as we all know, the workplace dynamics is changing. I mean, until a few years back, the workforce used to be very focused towards a structured set of ways in which it is working. Today, Gen AI is disrupting the workplace.
Yeah.
So I think key is adaptability, listening to what's happening in the market and how quickly you're adapting to it and changing your workplace strategies. How are you ensuring that you're on top of the curve? So for me, it's very important as HR/business leader to not just understand your workforce, but also understand the business you are in. How are you disrupting the business? How are you making sure that your workforce is future ready? And making the right amount of investments in that direction becomes extremely critical.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense, makes sense. And since you also mentioned AI and how that is disrupting the current workflow, then how do you personally keep yourself ahead of the emerging HR trends, and at the same time reflecting that on the organization's readiness for those trends?
So fortunately for me, the workplace that I'm currently with is a very thriving workplace where day in and day out you walk on any floor, you walk on any meetings, you're on a group chat, people are talking about these stuff. So it's not a new word, it's not a buzzword.
Yeah.
You already know what's happening. Keeping track of the trends is something that is the pulse of the organization. This is something that we thrive upon. So internally, there is a lot of support groups that talks about such things, and very proactively at a leadership level, openly we discuss about what's happening and how are we getting ourselves ready. So that's how I keep track of it, and also bringing some of those best practices to our organization so that it could be leveraged for our customer organization, and vice versa. If we hear, then how do we bring those best practices to our employee? I personally am, like I mentioned, I like reading, I like going for long walks, so I do listen to a lot of inspiring podcasts, and I learn, my source of learning is that where podcast is something that I leverage upon. I read a lot, I participate in forums. And I think the power of networking is something that's extremely important, going for all these events where you know what is happening. So all of this, and having your mentors and leaders who constantly support you. So that a combination of all of this has become an instrumental part in the growth journey.
All right, great, great, great. Out of curiosity, and we are in a podcast format, what would be some of the interesting podcasts that you've come across that you often listen to?
There's a modern people leader that I probably listen whenever there is a new podcast. Then there is a podcast by Shom that I listen to. Then there is a podcast which is on HR culture that I listen to. So I have a top 10 list that I listen to from an HR and business perspective. Also, there are quite a few.
All right, great. Thanks for sharing. I think we'll also listen to those. Perfect. So, and then now that we've talked about the trends and what is going on, and we are also in an unpredictable economy. So, how do you then approach this whole aspect of workforce planning? And what is your kind of thought process to approaching the planning aspect of the overall workforce in the organization?
See, certain traditional things won't change. I mean, year end, you go in, you have your planning session, you predict what is needed, and you make your workflows planning according to that. But what's shifting is probably creating spaces for that flexibility, having a matrix in place that you don't revisit a particular matrix that you have created at end of the year with saying that was this strategy successful for me or not. So you have regular check-in, allow room for flexibility, constantly have teams who is tapping into whether whether a certain workforce planning is working for me or it's not working for me. Where am I deploying my skills? How do I change? What kind of investments am I making? Will it yield the return that I'm expecting or not? So having room for that agility is very important, that flexibility is important, and revisiting and really looking day in and day out of that matrix, that how is the shift happening, and is it relevant in today's time, or do I need to go back and change for it? I feel that if you have that kind of structure, it really works, especially in an organization of our size. It kind of validates that the investment is going in the right direction, your planning is in the right direction. And of course, learning from your mistakes. We all are human. Nobody of us can predict what's for the future. So how do you make sure that you learn from your mistakes and not take the bets which is not working out for you?
Yeah. Makes sense. And then right now you've been talking about the complete workflow from planning to implementation. So where and how have you seen the technology aspect within the domain of HR playing a role? And then furthermore, you could also talk about if you've seen any disruptions happening in that workflow because of technology.
Right. So I think in all aspect of employee experience, I would see that the disruption is happening. Traditionally, you would run an employee satisfaction survey once in a year. Now,
Yeah.
today, if you're running a program or an initiative, you have these online bots which can tell you what's the pulse level right now. So I think, and before even you implement, you know whether this is going to be successful or not. You have predictive analytics today, which is telling the trends much before an employee is disengaged, that whether there is a forcible attrition, do we need to talk about this? Do we need to address it? So I do think that there are disruptions happening in the employee experience space. Look at talent acquisition today. There are bots and tools where from screening to scheduling interviews, people interventions is not required. You just have to go through a couple of plugins and it's done. I mean, you are able to do away with the screening is easier, the resume sourcing is faster, and you don't need, the same job was done by 3 people. Today it's done by one person and a tool. So I think the experience is becoming better from an employee experience perspective, where you're applying for a interview and you have all information at your fingertips. You have an app which will tell you where you're entering, what it is. Forums like Glassdoors are telling you about what kind of culture the company is all about. And then it's just not one technology. There is a combination of things that will help you understand where it is. So I think the pace of HR tech is really disrupting. We are ready to welcome the new workforce. We now seeing a workforce which is a combination of generations sitting in, and tech is only enabling us our from workforce which were earlier sitting in office. Today we have contingent workforce, we have part-time workforce, we have digital workforce. How are we bringing all of them into the same culture of the company? It's purely the use of tech that is helping us enable the same culture across various offices and geographies.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. If we just take, you were mentioning right now an example of from sourcing to scheduling. That was a great flow where technology now automates pretty much a bunch of the tasks there. Can you share with us probably one more example, for example, within the interviewing technology or further in the journey of employee where you've seen something interesting happening?
Right. So take, for example, we all have list of candidates who join us, and fortunately, unfortunately, they either like the company or they don't like the company. And some of these are absconding list and not there. So today the technology is able to tell you whether this particular kind of profile will be suited in the job profile or not, or your job description itself is compelling enough to match the profile, right? Probably I have a job description, I have a resume with me, and I know where there is 100% match, but may not be culturally aligned to the role that we are looking for. So I mean, the usage of the tool is immense. I would say at least thrice in a week I get calls from various people who are exploring HR tech in this space, and whether it from interviewing to employee experience to feedbacks to culture integration to enabling onboarding experience. It's probably everywhere. There is not one dimension that people are not talking about.
Yeah.
From LLT, LLT is another great example. Things which used to take hours of classroom. Today, everything is done in like hours. People no longer have time to sit for 8 hours of training program. And that information is crystallized and concised into 1 hour. So there are various tools which is helping you becoming smarter as an individual and be more effective at your workplace.
Yeah. Thank you for those. Those were interesting examples. Now talking about candidate fit, etc. One of the key things that we'd like to understand is what are some of, as an HR leader, what are some of the key challenges that in current times have you come across? And then also, if you could talk about and elaborate on how you've gone about addressing those challenges.
So I think there's been a shift with respect to what the workforce used to be. I mean, traditionally, I remember when I joined the workforce, my and when I say I mean people from my generation used to feel that work is everything that it is, right? My passions, my hobby used to be for Saturday and Sundays. Today, the workforce is very clear that there are certain hours that is going in creating a balance in their personal pursuits, and it could be anything ranging from a hobby to probably a secondary career that they would have, and it may not be something which is a half and half with respect to doing 50% time with the corporate and 50% on their own. But I do think that there is a shift. You are committed to your passion, and organizations today are understanding that, and they are also, most cases, they are also supportive, because it's, if you have that integration, your mental well-being is there. You know that there are ways in which you are de-stressing yourself. And there is a huge acknowledgement of when today, if somebody wants to take a break for recharging themselves, it's not questioned anymore. So I do see that kind of shift happening in today's time, and we are supportive, and that is where the companies are acing out, where you are respectful of the flexible nature of the work. I may work on a project which is extremely grilling for probably months together, and then I would take weeks of off and I would recharge myself. Before, you would feel guilty about doing something like that, but today it's a norm. It is acceptable, and I think this is a great evolution in the way in which today's generation is claiming for their work-life balance or integration. So very supportive of that. I think that is something, to answer to your question, I see a shift, and in the positive direction, where it's just not your work, but is also your other pursuits that you are catering to.
Yeah, and that's a great shift, actually, and that openness within the industry now for that.
Then I'm a guitar singer, and I would go and play my guitar post 6 every day. I want to play a sport, and that's something. And I very respectfully manage my calendar. It's not disrupting my work. So that balance is becoming very critical today.
Yeah, makes sense. So Shweta, now we're coming to the end of our podcast, but before that, I have one last question for you, which is more towards an advice for the younger generation who is about to join the workforce, and specifically within the domain of HR, they're looking forward to build their career. What would be your thoughts and advice for them as they start their career?
I don't have one advice, but I can give a couple of them.
Sure.
I think never stop believing in yourself. That's the biggest thing, that if you think this is something that you're passionate about, stop believing in it. And if you want to stay relevant, then you have to learn continuously. And a combination of data and business is very important. If you do not understand numbers, you're not relevant today. So understand your numbers, make sense of those numbers, understand the business, and probably these are the keys that will help you achieve a position of repute within the organization. And
That's
yeah, while you are doing all of it, never stop having fun. So that's very important, that you put a pat on your shoulder and say, hey, I've come so far. So give credit to yourself.
perfect. I think those are great advice, both on the work side and on the life side. So I think on that note, thank you so much, Shweta, for your time and sharing your thoughts. And have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you.